And we begin this hour with brand new CNN reporting that I have with my colleague Annie Grayer about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's new Department of Government Efficiency known as DOGE. We're told the concern is growing among senior House Republicans that plans to cut $2 trillion from the federal government by 2026 just isn't realistic. Some have even raised those concerns with GOP leadership. I want to bring in the other person on the byline with this story, Capitol Hill reporter Annie Grayer. So, Annie, tell us more about the worry among these Republicans we've been speaking to.
Well, the worry is how are they going to do this? I think broadly, Republicans and even some Democrats really support this effort of cutting spending and excess government waste. There's really just a concern of how to do it. I mean, this bold price tag of $2 trillion to cut is one that has many Republicans scratching their heads because discretionary spending, all of discretionary spending, which includes defense spending, is less than $2 trillion. And then you have mandatory spending, which includes the popular programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That is a very politically tricky issue. Even Donald Trump has said he doesn't want to touch. So that has left Republicans wondering, well, okay, how are we going to do this? There are a lot of ideas floating around. I just want to emphasize, Pam, that it's very much in the idea incubator stage. But one of those ideas includes firing all federal workers who were hired in the government in the last year. But that's getting some pushback internally and was told to, take all of these things with a grain of salt. But looking at the ideas that are floating around, Republicans and people on the Appropriations Committee say that these are really just small ideas that are not going to make a big dent in that $2 trillion price tag. But despite all of the concern here, Republicans are making the case directly to Musk and Ramaswamy and Trump that they need to work with Congress to make this happen and not around Congress. This was the case that lawmakers made in their private meeting with Musk and Ramaswamy last week. So we'll just have to see how Donald Trump, when he gets into office, how he approaches all of this.
We shall see. Annie Grayer, thank you so much. And joining us now is Republican Congressman James Comer of Kentucky. He is the chair of the House Oversight Committee and met with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy last week. Congressman, thank you for coming on. So you just heard there from Annie really laying it out that we've been speaking to senior House Republicans who have expressed concern about the reality of DOGE's spending cuts, with one representative telling us there's a lot of people asking correctly, so how am I going to do that? In your view, how realistic do you think DOGE's goals are of cutting $2 trillion? Can you do it without touching Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid?
Well, we're going to find out. I think it's great that we have people in the private sector that are willing to volunteer their time and work with Congress and work with the new Trump administration to try to make government more efficient. Of course, there are going to be skeptics in Congress. Of course, there are going to be senior members of Congress that have been here a long time and very happy with the status quo. I don't know if the goal is attainable, but I know this. I'm going to do everything I can to work with DOGE and work with the Trump administration to cut as much wasteful spending as possible. And I think the American people will appreciate any significant savings in their tax dollars. Right now, I think it's pretty clear the majority of Americans aren't satisfied with how their hard-earned tax dollars are being spent in Washington.
So you sat down with Musk and Ramaswamy last week. What was your biggest takeaway from that meeting? Bring us inside the discussions and how this is all going to work.
Yeah. Well, DOGE is going to be a commission. It's not going to be a government agency. They're going to have a few staffers. My committee, the House Oversight Committee, has legislative jurisdiction over a big percentage of what they're wanting to do legislatively. So we're working with Musk and Ramaswamy and their staffers. They're creating this commission to have an expiration date. The expiration date is going to be July 4th, 2026. So they're going to try to make these recommendations over the first year and a half of the Trump administration, and then walk away. And that's kind of setting an example as to how you can create something in the government, but then have a sunset clause to where it ends. The problem now in government, it's been the problem for decades, Pam, is that you create a government program or create a government agency, it never goes away, even when it becomes obsolete or inefficient. If anything, it grows every year and they have a cost of living adjustment and all of that. So what DOGE is trying to do is just have a sincere effort to try to ensure that government is more efficient and tax dollars are better spent.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because our reporting indicates House Republicans plan to put a lot of DOGE's goals into the reconciliation bill. What's the plan to do there? As you heard, Annie, one of the ideas being tossed around is firing every federal employee from the last year. What about getting rid of DEI programs, getting rid of climate change programs? Help us understand what's actually being looked at to put into that bill.
Well, if you look at a lot of the big spending packages that have passed Congress over the past 4 years, from the end of COVID through today, there have been enormous grant funds created in the Department of Energy and the Department of Agriculture and all of these different agencies, the EPA, that deal with specific what we would call Green New Deal type initiatives. These grant funds were supposed to be, created over a 5 to 10 year time period. There's serious interest in looking at these grants to see if they're efficient, if they're being spent wisely, if all this solar money, if all of these EV hookups that have been paid for that really, we haven't seen a lot of results from, if that money's being spent wisely. If not, they're going to claw it back. And I think what the average person can't imagine is how many grant pools, grant funds, and pools of money there are around the federal government. Obviously, you mentioned the federal workforce. The number of federal employees have skyrocketed over the past 4 years, especially the number that are working from home and not even coming to work. Government efficiency has gone down. There's a correlation with working from home and being efficient with the government. It may be different in the private sector, but in the government, it's not working out. So everything's on the table. Every big expenditure over the past 4 years is on the table. There's money in the infrastructure bill. There's money in COVID bills that haven't been spent yet. We're going to look at that, and then you look at improper payments. That's a big issue, where the government sends money to people fraudulently in Medicare, in Medicaid, where they send money fraudulently in unemployment insurance, fraudulent IRS tax refunds. All of these improper payments are also on the table, and I think Musk and Ramaswamy have a good idea on how to prevent so much fraud and so many fraudulent payments in the federal government.
Let me just follow up with you, because you talk about the grant money and so forth. Do you have concern when it comes to Elon Musk and the fact that he has billions of dollars of government contracts, right? How some of what he wants to do with the grant money, for example, could create a conflict of interest?
Well, I think he's well aware of the fact that he has some contracts with the government. He's well aware of the fact that all eyes are going to be on him. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that any grant work that any of Musk's major companies have done with the government has been a bad deal. If they are a bad deal, I think that'll be on the
competitors. Whether you would take back, for example, a competitor of Musk's companies, then taking away some of that money that the government has given, and the questions that could raise.
I think that's something that's going to be on the table. Everything's going to be on the table. Musk is, he's a very wealthy individual, and I don't think he's going to lose much sleep if members of Congress or people in DOGE think that something isn't right that he's suggested. Everything DOGE suggests may not be well received in Congress, but I'll tell you this, Pam, I'm excited. I've had several meetings with Ramaswamy. My staff is communicating with their staff, and I think that a lot of their goals and objectives can be achieved. We're going to certainly try to do that. There are members of Congress, there are a few in my own party that are going to be obstructionists. They've been obstructionists since about the time I was born. But at the end of the day, we've got a job to do. I think the American people made it loud and clear. They're not happy with the direction Congress is going. They're not happy with how their tax dollars are being spent. And we're going to try. And I'll say this, Pam, there are a lot of Democrats that are wanting to participate in DOGE as well, even on my committee. So hopefully we can get some things done.
But really quickly, before we let you go, you talk about your committee. I want to ask you about AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, announcing her bid for the top Democrat spot on your committee. What are your thoughts? Would you like to co-chair with her?
I'm a big AOC fan. Obviously, I don't agree with very much of her policy, but I think she's a good person. I think she's very well spoken. I did not have a good relationship with Jamie Raskin. I don't think that's any secret. I tell the press when they ask about the race for a ranking member, the Democrats have nowhere to go but up after having Jamie Raskin for the last 4 years. So I think AOC would be great. Jerry Connolly would be great. I know Raj Krishnamurti, Ro Khanna, their names have been thrown in the hat. But I certainly look forward to working with the next ranking member. And if it's AOC, I think we'll have a good working relationship. We'll obviously have a lot of differences on policy, but I think she's a good, well-spoken person for the Democrats to serve in that position.
All right, Chairman Comer, thank you for coming on, sharing your perspective. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And so